We are live. That's what I'm seeing in front of me right now. Hey everybody, how you doing? Looking to see you all come on in. Hey, embrace the coming light. Great to see you guys. Come on in, come on in. How does Scott Adams do it? Come on in, everyone. He has that very cool, laid back sort of. Come on in, everybody. It's great to have you here. You don't know what you're gonna get. You get your simultaneous sip, of course, right, with Scott Adams. And I do have some nice Americano here, some espresso. All right, gang. I wanted to do a quick live feed with you. I'm sure you're all now aware that Fox News, should we call them Judas at this point? Fox News and CNN have teamed up today to give this election to Joe Biden. Pretty much everyone will follow after that. MSNBC, NBC, CBS, they're already doing it. They've announced Biden the official winner of the election. They gave him Pennsylvania. They're declaring him the 46th president of the United States. Now, of course, the media does not, and everyone knows this, the media does not decide the presidency. Electors do, okay? But this is a clear assault, as it were, information warfare offensive. It's being launched by the mainstream media, again led by Fox, and it has, make no mistake, it has as its main goal to intimidate Republican congressmen, senators, legislatures throughout the country. Well, particularly in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. It's really there to say, look, are you with this guy who's we have now declared the loser of this election, or are you with us? If you're with us, we'll make your life easy. If you're with that guy, we're going to bring you down right along with Trump. So that's what the media is trying to do here. They're trying to create a tremendous pressure and a tremendous coordinated intimidation for senators, congressmen, state legislatures to stay out. Biden has been declared the winner. You stay out of this process. That's what they're trying to do. And they did it today for very good reason, because over the last 24 hours, we've seen two major developments come out that were promising to flip several counties red and possibly several states red. Pennsylvania, Michigan being the two major ones in this process. So what I want to do in this live feed is just kind of bring all of this together for us to help us think through clearly what's going on. And make sure we understand this is emphatically not over. This is emphatically not over. Just keep your eye on Trump, see what he's doing. And we have to understand that the media does not have the power it once did. That's another thing we're going to have to keep front and center for us. And we're going to have to look as well at the two major, thanks, John, very appreciated, at the two major developments of the last 24 hours that was swinging the leverage way away from Biden and towards Trump. But first, gang, you're seeing all of the deplatforming. You're seeing all of this crazy and insane censorship that big tech is engaged in right now. We need to make sure that we don't lose touch with each other. And so what I want you to do right now, as we're going through this, is click on the link below, right below this video, and sign up on our email list. This is the best way for us to have direct contact with each other, right? There's no way for big tech to ever get between us. And make it worth your while, you can do that. You can sign up for my email list simply by downloading a free gift, which is our fake news antidote, needed now more than ever. It's a compilation of about 20 sites that I go to each and every day for my news. They're all conservative. They all celebrate Trump and nationalist populism. And we need these news resources now more than ever as we begin to see the mainstream media basically collude together and eventually, make no mistake, implode together. That's keeping the long range vision here of what's going on. So if you click on the link below and download your free copy of our fake news antidote, you automatically get included in our email list. Okay, and that's the way we're going to stay together here. We've got a massive email list. It's so exciting to see, but I want to double it. I mean, I want us to get to the point we've got over 600,000 YouTube subscribers. I want 600,000 on that email list. We cannot lose in touch with each other, and if we stay in touch with each other, we win. That's key. We always have to stay together. So make sure you click on that link down below, download your fake news antidote, and add my gift to you, absolutely free. And as a result, you'll be put on our email list, and we'll never lose touch with each other no matter what happens here with big tech. All right, so why did Fox News and CNN announce Biden the big winner today? Why today of all days? Well, I think it's because of two recent developments over the last 24 hours. Now, the first was from the Supreme Court, okay, and specifically from Judge Sam Alito. He gave a direct order that all ballots received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd in Pennsylvania must be segregated and separated from all ballots cast prior to 8 p.m. Also, those votes could not be counted together. They had it to be counted separately. They couldn't, the ballots cast after 8 p.m. could not be included in the total vote of Pennsylvania, okay? We did a video yesterday about this Act 77, which we'll get into in Pennsylvania, where it looked like the Supreme Court was going to get very much involved with this, right? So this is really neat. That development, that order that Sam Alito gave is right on top of what we were talking about in yesterday's video. All right, the other big development, of course, involves Dominion voting machines, which have demonstrably glitched in Michigan, recasting 6,000 votes for Biden that were originally cast for Trump. And we're finding that this Dominion voting system, I'm sure you've heard of this, was used in several other states and counties with similar problems. So this is going to force a hand recount now in, I think, at least 30 counties and so forth. And we also had Rudy Giuliani announce a press conference in Philadelphia. Rudy Giuliani is Trump's lawyer, to highlight the evidence of corruption that the Trump legal team has been putting together, which they say is going to shock the world. So those two major developments, the development of the Supreme Court getting involved, and then the development of the Dominion machine, the voting systems glitching, and so on, with all the other irregularities, we're clearly promising to see a very different electoral map sometime in the next few days. So as a way of bypassing that, as a way of clouding that and eclipsing that, Fox News, CNN, they ignored the Supreme Court order issued by Alito to segregate the PA ballots. They counted them all together, as I understand it. They ignored the numerous glitches coming from Dominion voting systems that are going to force recounts, hand counts, upwards of 30 counties. They ignored the evidence of vote tampering and ballot stuffing, and they went ahead and gave Biden Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and with it the election. So now, of course, this does not change a single thing in terms of actual facticity and the legal battle, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it does most certainly obfuscate the immensity of the Supreme Court order with the information warfare that they're spreading about Biden winning the presidency. Again, this is all aimed at intimidating those who want to continue the fight, and intimidating particularly Republican congressmen, senators, legislators that are going to take a look at the next few days of what the Supreme Court decides and what courts decide regarding the amount of corruption in the electoral process. It's to make them back off and say, look, just, yeah, there may have been some corrupt things here or there. Yeah, the Supreme Court may flip Pennsylvania, but when all is said and done, you just fall in line here, or else we're going to take you down along with Trump. So that's what I think is going on here. So I think we've got three things clashing that I want to talk about here. We've got the media misinformation that's coming out as of today. We've got the Supreme Court order, and we've got increasing evidence of election corruption. So let's talk about each one of these in turn and see how they all relate to one another as we move forward from here. All right. So let's start with the Supreme Court order, because that's what we talked about in yesterday's video, if you want to go back and reference it. We were a bit ahead of the curve, I gotta say. I was really excited to see that order come from Sam Alito last night. Which, all right, I'm gonna stay focused here. So what's going on here is a development of a two-pronged attack from Trump's legal team. First, they're trying to get all the votes received after 8 p.m. in Pennsylvania tossed from consideration, precisely because they are now officially illegal votes. We'll talk about why that is. So that's the first thing. Secondly, they're trying to overturn Wisconsin and Michigan because of the evidence of massive vote fraud. So that's how the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, the order there, and the evidence of voter fraud in Wisconsin and Michigan have been working together over the last 24 hours in Trump's favor. So what's going on in Pennsylvania? In 2019, just real quick, and again, you can go to the other video to get more info on this, but in 2019, the Pennsylvania legislature passed a law called Act 77. Look it up, easy to see, you can read it for yourself. Act 77, and if you look it up, what you want to do is do a word search, spell it out, EIGHT, 8 o'clock p.m. All right, just do a word search for that. And what you'll see is that time pops up in this sentence. No absentee ballot under this subsection shall be counted, which is received in the office of the County Board of Elections later than 8 o'clock p.m. on the day of the primary or election. So the act expressly states that there is a deadline for getting your vote in, and that deadline is the same deadline that everybody who votes in person has to abide by, 8 p.m. on the day of the election. If you're late on that, shame on you. It's like showing up to the polls at 9 p.m. Sorry, they're going to be closed. That's that. And the importance of this, as we now all know, the importance of this is so that once the counting begins, we don't get to go and dump, oh, look, brand new ballots that just happened to show up at 4 a.m. in the morning into the mix. We can't do that because, of course, that's redoing the election. In effect, we found out who's winning by virtue of the election day and early vote tally. 8 p.m. is the end of it, and then we start counting. Oh, wait a minute, my side's losing. Well, let me see if I can find a box of 100,000 votes. Oh, look, here you go, and it's all from my candidate. Isn't that great? So it's a great law. It's called Act 77. And what happened, though? What happened is that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court several weeks back ended up changing that law by a vote of 4-3. And that, as I understand it, there are 4 liberals and 3 conservatives. You can vote for your Supreme Court in Pennsylvania on a ticket. You actually vote for Democrats to sit on there or Republicans to sit on the Supreme Court. So they decided in a 4-3 decision that mail-in ballots emphatically do not have to be received by 8 p.m. They don't even have to be received by Election Day. Instead, they moved the goal line, as it were, to the date of being postmarked. And as long as the ballot was postmarked on or before Election Day and received within upwards of 3 days thereafter, the vote will be counted. Okay, so it's irrelevant whether or not you agree with that decision, and it's irrelevant whether or not you agree with Act 77. It just doesn't matter. What the Supreme Court saw, because what ended up happening was the Republican Party brought this before the Supreme Court saying, hey, wait a minute, you have judges interfering with the the process, the election process that has been given to the state legislatures, and the state legislatures alone to regulate and to decide. So they brought it to the Supreme Court. They asked to have the ruling expedited. The Supreme Court said, and they can't do it. This is going to be too important of a decision. They're going to have to wait till after the election. Amy Coney Barrett was getting acclimated. Generally, the new Supreme Court justice waits about 2 weeks in order to read all the briefings and so forth to make a decision. So what happened is it got brought before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, as represented by Sam Alito, has concluded that there's enough evidence, as far as they could see, that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania violated the United States Constitution. Again, you have to get this. This is very interesting. This is the beauty of having a 5 conservative vote majority, solid block on the Supreme Court. When you believe in the U.S. Constitution as a living document, right, as liberals do, what they do is they'll take a law and they'll kind of mess around with it and change it a little bit, and they'll say, okay, that works. Now we like it. Okay, that's a good law. But what conservatives are saying, the constructivists of the Constitution are saying, is, well, if the Supreme Court of a state thinks that a law is not good or it violates the Constitution or whatever it happens to be, all they can do is reject it. All they can do is send it back to them. All they can do is say, sorry, this violates the Constitution. They can't change the law. A court cannot legislate. To change a law requires the process of legislation in legislatures. A judicial fiat cannot change a law, right? And so what happens, what is happening right before our very eyes, is Sam Alito has affirmed that as far as what he and other conservatives in the court are seeing, they are seeing more or less, and again, they haven't rendered a decision yet, but they are seeing the possibility, very real possibility, of a blatant overreach by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to actually make law, to change law. And the problem is, because that's bad enough, you're not supposed to have judges be legislatures. That's bad enough. But Article 1, Section 4 of the United States states unequivocally, the time, places, and manner of holding elections shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. In other words, the U.S. Constitution, state legislatures, not the court, state legislatures have the exclusive right to prescribe the time, the place, and the manner of holding elections. So what this means is that in failing to simply state that Act 77 is unconstitutional and then send it back to the legislature to rewrite it, instead of that, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court created new rules for the time, place, and manner of the election in a direct violation of the U.S. Constitution. All right, and so that's what the Republican Party of Pennsylvania they filed. They filed a writ. It's technically called a writ of certiorari, which is just simply a petition for a higher court to review the decision of a lower court. And listen to what Sam Alito wrote about this. And I've got it right in front of me. You could read it yourself if you just punch in Sam Alito, Act 77. Quote, Act 77 unambiguously required that all mail-in ballots must be received by 8 p.m. on election day, right? Remember the order he gave, that any ballots that came in after 8 p.m. have to be segregated and separated and counted separately from the votes that came in prior to that. Act 77 unambiguously required that all mail-in ballots must be received by 8 p.m. on election day. That the Pennsylvania Supreme Court expressly acknowledged that the statutory provision mandating receipt by election day was unambiguous, and that its abrogation of that rule was not based on an interpretation of the statute. The court further conceded that the statutory deadline was constitutional on its face, but the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania claimed broad power to do what it thought was needed to respond to a natural disaster. That's what they called it, like COVID. And it justified its decree, changing the time and date and so on, as necessary to protect voters' rights under the Free and Equal Elections Clause of the state constitution. Now, here's Alito's response, again, writing for the other conservatives. This issue has national importance, and there is a strong likelihood that the state Supreme Court decision violates the federal Constitution. The provisions of the federal Constitution conferring on state legislatures, not state courts, state legislatures, the authority to make rules governing federal elections would be meaningless if a state court could simply override the rules adopted by the legislature simply by claiming that a state constitutional provision gave the courts the authority to make whatever rules it thought appropriate for the conduct of a fair election. For these reasons, the question presented by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision calls out for review by this court. So that's what's in front of the Supreme Court right now. And here's the deal. If the Supreme Court rules that Pennsylvania Supreme Court violated the Constitution of the United States, then that means that every and all ballots received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd are automatically invalidated. Okay, so this is strategy number one for the Trump legal team. It is to get all those votes that were cast after 8 p.m. out of there, all right, because they are illegal votes. So this is why it's so huge that Sam Alito last night gave the order. He heard that Pennsylvania was not segregating the ballots between those received before 8 p.m. on November 3rd and those received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd. So he had to expressly give an order to all Pennsylvania electors that the ballots that arrive after 8 p.m. must be sequestered. They must be segregated from and counted separately from the total prior to the 8 o'clock November 3rd deadline. And Pennsylvania has to comply with that. They have no choice. So obviously that didn't seem to matter to Fox News and to CNN. I mean, I get CNN, but I don't know what the games are that Fox News is playing here. Pennsylvania right now is still in play. It's still up in the air because we don't know the final vote count that's going to be allowed here. All right, so that's the first thing, okay? So that's the first legal strategy. Get rid of all those votes that were smuggled into the counting process after 8 p.m. thrown out. The second strategy then is to get rid of all of the corrupt and unverified chain of custody votes, those that flunk the chain of custody objective test, get those thrown out and expose by virtue of exposing a massive voter fraud scheme. I don't think that's going to be hard, to be honest with you. We've got now the glitches in the Dominion voting system. They're becoming more and more apparent there. And of course, in addition to the glitches, you have the ballot stuffing. Even Maria Bartiromo of Fox News, Fox Business Network, pointed out that there were reports of 65,000 votes dumped ballots, with 100% of the ballots for Biden at 4 a.m. in Wisconsin. There was apparently 138,499 vote dump of ballots in Michigan at around 4 a.m. with about 100% of the ballots for Biden. You have vote counting with inexplicably stopping in Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania when Trump was ahead and before the vote dump. And by the way, shortly after, Fox News absolutely impulsively and without any justification called Arizona for Biden. Remember, Biden lost more Texas counties than any Democrat presidential candidate in history. All right. And Fox sat on calling Texas for hours. Trump won Florida by 3.5%, and Fox sat on Florida for hours. Arizona may come down to 2 votes. It may come down to 2 votes, and they called it the moment the polls closed in Arizona. I mean, that's something weird's going on. Another thing, too, is that Biden was underperforming or has underperformed every single metropolitan center in the United States. Every single one from 2016 levels, he's underperformed in every urban metropolitan area except for 4. And what do you guess they are, right? They're in Madison in Wisconsin, right? Detroit, Michigan, Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and Atlanta in Georgia. Well, what do you know about that, right? Okay, and then you have a number of things. You have poll workers being accused of forcing voters to use Sharpies rather than pens in order to validate their ballots. You have videos of poll workers changing votes afterward. All that's going on. So the Trump legal team is going to have to amass one of the most shocking cases of voter fraud imaginable, in addition to the Supreme Court overturning and throwing out all votes cast in Pennsylvania after 8 p.m. And then also we have that bizarre discrepancy between Biden's vote count and the Democrat senator down ticket, right? So according to Pew Research, they found that only about 4% of voters planned to vote for the president and a Senate candidate from another party. So only about 4% were voting for Biden and then the Republican senator, and only about 4% were voting for Trump and the Democrat senator. So when you look at the numbers from Michigan, Trump has 2,637,173 votes, whereas the GOP senator has 2,630,000 votes. So that's a difference of about 7,000 votes. 2.637 versus 2.630. Difference about 7,000 votes, right around that 4% range kind of thing. Biden in Michigan has 2,787,000 votes, while the Democrat senator has only 2,718,000. That's a difference of 70,000 votes, 69,093. It's a difference of 70,000 votes. That's 10 times the difference of Trump and the GOP senator. So there were ballots that came in that didn't vote for Biden and then overwhelmingly for the Republican senator. No, there were ballots that came in that only had one name on there, and that was Biden. And so, and it was even worse in Georgia, apparently. The numbers in Georgia that separate Biden and the Senate candidate there was 96,000 votes. The difference between Trump and the GOP Senate candidate, 818 votes. That's what you're going to expect. It's a very, marginal difference, negligible difference. This is not a negligible difference. These were ballots with only Biden's name on it. So that's what we're going to have to see as the hand counting comes in and the like. So we'll have to see what the Trump legal team puts forward as their full evidence for election fraud, but they're promising to produce a shocking level of corruption that's gonna shock everyone, not just here in the United States, I'm sure in the world. And then finally, now so we've got the Pennsylvania situation that we want to watch with the Supreme Court, and then we've got the overall corruption of the electoral process, primarily in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. So now, what do we do with this, mainstream media that's coming out and engaging in blatant information warfare, as Steve Bannon likes to call it, where they're deliberately trying to take Trump out and put Biden in? What do we do with them? All right. Again, nice place to stop and mention, hey, download that fake news antidote. It's absolutely free. It's my gift to you, but I do have an ulterior motive, and I hopefully it's a fair one. And then ulterior motive is by downloading that, you're going to be added to our email list. And with all the censorship that's going on with big tech, with all the deplatforming, I want to make sure we never lose touch with each other. We will have actual direct contact with each other if you sign up on my email newsletter list. You're going to love it. It's a great resource. We have lots of back and forth and You're going to be invited to special events that nobody else knows about, all this cool stuff. So make sure you download your fake news antidote. That fake news antidote is a compilation of about 20 different alternative news sites that I go to each and every day that celebrate rather than denigrate the rise of a new conservative age. And so what you want to do is download that, and by getting that absolutely free, you'll get added to our email list to boot. So it's just to make it a nice win-win. We have your email so that if we ever get deplatformed, we're able to contact you and let you know where to find us and all that good stuff. And then you get a nice gift to be able to look at some great news sites, 20 of them that are all together. We're all have great solidarity in celebrating nationalism, populism, traditionalism, and most especially the re-election of President Trump, which is, of course, the media is attempting to steal from behind us here, right in front of us, behind us. All right, so what we have to, so what are we going to do about the mainstream media? All right, what we have to do, we have to understand is that we are living in a time where we're seeing a massive shift away from what was called mass society to a network society. Okay, so this is very, very important for us to get, because I'm hearing people say, oh, you know, they own the media, there's nothing we can do, they've got everything. Take a step back here. Take a step back here. Mass society was this kind of society that was built in the 19th century industrialized revolution. And in the Industrial Revolution, what happened is that we went from being a rural-based, agricultural-based society to an urban-based, right, industrial-based society. So at the beginning of the 19th century, 90% of Americans lived in rural areas and only 10% urban. By the end of the 19th century, that flipped. 90% were in urban areas, only about 10% in rural. By the way, it's all going back now to the rural areas because our cities are imploding, right? They're Democrat messes. So anyway, so what happened is we created something called a mass society. And a mass society is very location specific. So it builds upwards, right? Big, tall buildings and big bureaucratic heavy structures, and it's location specific. So if you want to get into finance, you have to move to New York and go to Wall Street. If you want to get into movies, then you have to move out to California to Hollywood. Or if you want to get into social media, you got to move over to Silicon Valley. And I mean, you get the drift. You want to get into country music, you got to move over to Nashville. Mass society is very location specific because it's all governed around these centralized bureaucratic structures. A great example is the post office. Back in the day when you wanted to communicate with anybody outside of the phone, or even before the phone, you had to go through the post office. That was really the only way you could send anything to anybody. What scholars are noticing is, as we've all been connected by the internet, we no longer live in what they would call a mass society, where you have this massive conglomeration of bureaucratic, bloated structures. Now society is flattening out because now we're all connected through the internet. So I could be on my phone and I could be closer to someone 10,000 miles away than I am with the guy sitting right next to me at a Starbucks or something like that. We're the only generation that's ever been able to do this with this telecommunicative revolution. And so what that means is that I don't need the post office so much anymore. Now I'll still use it here or there, but generally speaking, I mean, 90, 95, 98% of our communication is done digitally today. It's not done through a post office anymore. We're doing it right now, aren't we? So what we have to understand is we're moving away from mass society to a network society. And the key thing with a network society is that it's flattening out. And the network society is no longer organized around these big, bloated, bureaucratic, colossal structures. Now it's being flattened out. Now it's being diversified. It's very hard to centralize a network society. It tends to be very, very diverse. And what we have to understand is that big media, and even we're finding big tech to a certain point, big media, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, CNN, they're all part of the old mass society. That's the business model that they're operating from. And what is happening is we're having all kinds of alternative news sources popping up, like Newsmax, right? Everybody's going to Newsmax now, or Turley Talks, right? Dr. Steve Turley on YouTube, whatever it is. We're all going to our Tim Pools. We're going to our Sticks. We're going to, you name it, Rogan. You just keep going, Shapiro. You're going to all these different alternative sites that are no longer characterized by, the Rockefeller building in New York City, in downtown Manhattan, that houses NBC. We're not, or the CNN building. No, somebody with a cheap webcam can now be getting actually more viewers and more subscribers than multi-billion-dollar news corporations. It's absolutely fascinating. That's the network society. Okay, so that's a big setup to ask the question, and to try to answer the question: what impact will the mainstream media coronating Joe Biden have on us? And I think the answer to that was November 3rd. November 3rd was the answer to how many Americans still trust the mainstream media. And what we found was that 70 million people, 70 million Americans, no longer trust the mainstream media. They did not believe in the world the media painted for them leading up to November 3rd. They did not believe the polls. They did not believe everything they were saying about Trump, that he was this horrible racist bigot and every phobe on the planet. They didn't buy any of that stuff. They supported Trump. They went out. They voted for him. Voted for him in higher numbers than the total amount of votes for Barack Obama in 2008. This was an absolute blowout election, with every legal vote counted. Absolute blowout election for Trump. So now the question is, has the media, do you think, gone too far in trying to coronate Biden? Is that going to convince those 70 million people that are watching this election being stolen right in front of them? I don't think so. Not in a network society. Maybe in a mass society, it would have worked, but it doesn't work anymore in a network society. You can't hide things from people anymore. We can no more hide things from people through big tech censorship than we can hide things from people by saying, well, make sure you don't send this through the post office to their mailboxes. That way we'll keep it from them, right? We'll keep it from them. If we don't, whatever you do, whatever you've got, don't give it to the post office so they can send it out to their mailboxes. We'll make sure nobody gets this information that we have in their mailboxes. Therefore, we're going to hide it, right? Nobody buys that anymore. Of course not. There's so many alternative sources now to be able to get your news and your information. We literally live in what scholars call an infocracy. An infocracy is a democracy that's built around immediately accessible digital information. And so I think what we have to understand is that within a network society, the corporatist, globalist, mainstream media simply does not have the input or the sway that it used to. Now, it still does over the other half of the nation, but that's infinitely better than it had, just even 30 years ago, when it had sway over 80% of the nation, right? So while coronating Biden as the next president may feel overwhelming in the way it appears, to be putting an end to it all and putting pressure, especially on the Republican congressmen, senators, and state legislatures to drop out of this and just let Biden walk away with this. We have to remember that for 70 million Americans, what Fox News and CNN did today means nothing. And you've got to get that. Again, it's overwhelming when you see it all over the place. And Newsweek does their Madam President edition for Biden and for Harris and all that. I get it. It's everywhere you look. You see it beaming out at you from TVs all over the place. But for 70 million Americans, it means nothing. And by the way, I need not have to tell you this. Do not buy the polls that the media will be pushing that say that 99% of the public believes Trump should concede the election. When you say, I mean, you should laugh at any poll you see from a mainstream media source at anybody. If you're at a bar and you're watching some sports and all of a sudden, a quick news update, and just the latest Pew poll just came out and said 69% of Americans believe Trump should concede this election. You need to shout out from the top of your lungs, that's fake news. That's BS. Barbara Streisand, that is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. They were nonsense leading up to the election. They're nonsense afterward. Do not buy it. My advice from this point forward is to stay, and I'll wrap it up here. My advice from this point forward is to stay focused. Stay absolutely focused. That starts by turning off mass media. Turn off the media of mass society. Turn on the media of the network society, right? That's here. That's Dave Rubin. That's, whoever you like, Styx or Tim Pool, whoever it is. Go subscribe. Make sure you support these channels big time. Very, very important. The big one is Newsmax. Newsmax is it looks to be the huge winner from the Fox News implosion. It's beyond me. If anything, if you think about it, the left seems to think they've got two victories here. Not only do they think they're taking out Trump, but I think they know now they're also taking out Fox News in the process. It's a very, very strange thing. So my advice, stay focused, turn off the mainstream media, most especially Fox. If anything, write to Fox. Go ahead and send them an email. I've had a good friend of mine just sent me a copy of the email sent to Fox. Send them an email. Let them know how much you would appreciate it, their fairness and their objectivity and their willingness to give our side a fair hearing and so forth, how radically disillusioned and disappointed you are, and frankly, horrified by their obvious anti-Trump bent in this entire election process, and tell them they're done. You have turned them off, and you're going to Newsmax, or tell them I'm going to see Dr. Steve Turley or something like that. Turn off the mainstream media. Stay focused on all the alternative news sites that I give you with your fake news antidote that you download by just clicking on that link below. Give me your email, and then you get added in my email system, and that way we will never lose touch with each other. We will stay in touch no matter what big tech does to us. And to sweeten that deal, you're getting your fake news antidote. Get your fake news antidote. All you need to do is you can click directly on all the news sources that I recommend that you go to, that I get my news from each and every day. They are awesome, encouraging news sources that celebrate rather than denigrate the rise of a new conservative age. And that's how we're going to get through this together, gang. We stick together. We stay focused. We keep our eyes on Trump and what he's doing there, right? Because this is all meant to discourage his legal team. It's all meant to, and I don't get the sense that, I think they knew this was coming. They knew this call for Biden was going to come. They were going to start coronating him as the 46th president. I think they knew it, and they're going. They're completely unimpeded here. We're waiting for the Supreme Court decision on Pennsylvania. That's going to be the big one. We're waiting for the decision. It'll obviously go to the Supreme Court about election corruption, and then we're going to wait to see whether or not that would be enough to flip, particularly Michigan and Pennsylvania, or whether it's so corrupt it has to go to the legislatures and their picking of electors, and hopefully because they're Republican electors, they pick pro-Trump electors at that point. So we've got a lot of things yet to unfold, and we will definitely be keeping our eyes on that in the days ahead. All right, gang. So stay strong. We're all right. Don't you worry about it at all. We did a conference. Many of you might know we did a video conference that several hundred of you attended the Saturday before the election. It was great. We had Red Eagle Politics with us. And, I got to tell you, I think everybody felt really pumped up. What I tried to do is give them all the trajectories, all these, long-term, big picture trajectories of how the world is becoming more and more and more conservative, and how the globalists are doing everything they possibly can to hold on to as much power for as long as they can, even blatantly stealing elections. The media is right there with them because they're all part of the corporatist globalist conglomerate, as it were. But as I made clear on Saturday, they can't hold on forever. All the trajectories are moving in our direction, but there are going to be times we're just going to have to be patient. We're just going to have to put our trust in those things, bigger things. And may I also say, we have the power of prayer on our side in a way they simply do not. We have the power of the sanctity of life, the sanctity of the family, and religious freedom in a way that they do not. And those three things, I think, ultimately give us the resources we need that are eternal by definition and therefore cannot possibly be destroyed. So hold on to that, pray like you've never prayed before, and we'll be getting through this, okay? All right, gang, there we go. This is a lot longer than I thought. I was going to be able to get it all in about half an hour. But all right, guys. Oh, thanks, Supreme Wish. Very, very appreciated. Thanks. Again, I had to stay a bit focused on this live feed, this live stream. So thank you all for the super chats. They mean so much. Let's keep going. This is nothing. I mean, again, we won. I think Steve Bannon is absolutely right. We won. We won more votes than Obama got in 2008. Which was the highest vote count of any presidential candidate in the history of the country. President Trump surpassed that. I think that shocked the Democrats. And I think they went to their, this is just my gut feeling. They went to their backup ballots at 4 a.m. to stuff Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania with, and I believe Georgia. And I think they're going to get caught. I do think that's where we are. And if the more they get caught and the more the Supreme Court says, wait a minute, that 8 p.m. deadline is written in stone in this law, and you can't change it without changing the law itself, which was not done, and you get rid of all those votes after 8 p.m., we may be seeing some real flips, especially since we're dealing with such small margins. So let's keep going. Turn off the mainstream media. Don't listen to them. Focus on a media that has not coronated Joe Biden, and we're going to keep pushing forward. All right, gang? All right. God bless you guys. It's really wonderful talking with you. I'll see you on Monday with whatever developments going on from now until Monday. But if something big breaks, I'll see you with a live stream either later on tonight or tomorrow as well. We're going to stay absolutely on top of this. We're not going to let them steal this election, at least not without a fight. And we're going to fight. President Trump fought for us 4 years straight. We're now going to fight for him. President Trump fought for us. We are now going to fight for him. All right? All right. Good. Excellent. Keep up. We're going to do it. Keep going. All right, guys. God bless. We'll see you.